Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Obogo.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever the world you are, and welcome to another episode of the Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Obogo. Now, I have a lady, a goddess, an empress. This is a woman who is using sacred sexuality to change the course of women's lives. She's helping women tap into their divine feminine. I'm talking about Lady Shepta. Now, she is a sacred sensuality coach, a thrice published author, and in her own words, a juju woman. So join me and welcome my incredible guest to the show. Welcome, Goddess.
Thank you. Thank you, Goddess Lillian, for that beautiful room. Welcome. I'm very happy to be here today.
Awesome, awesome. So I've been kind of like stalking you on Instagram for a little while, and I've just been watching your stuff. And my friends will send me stuff and go, "You should really be talking to her." And I'm like, "I will. I'm coming. I'm just watching her stuff." They're like, "Interview the woman." I'm like, "Okay, so here we are."
Yay! Shout out to your friends. Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, my friends are like, they keep sending me your stuff, and I'm like, all right, okay, it's a sign, universe. Yes, I'm going to ask. So yes, I do. But let's talk about first what brought you to becoming a coach and a healer.
Yes. So I love answering this question. I get asked it a lot. So I actually, growing up, I was very much so the good girl, and I was very rigid, and I pretty much was a Christian.
Right.
Growing. Um, at a young age, I very much so wanted to just kind of follow what I was told to do, which was, go to school, get good grades, and keep your legs closed until you're married. And, that will basically bring you into heaven and make your parents happy and, all the things that come with that. So I basically pretty much did that. I grew up in Philadelphia, when I would say like the hood environment. So I very much so kind of just wanted to be not as stressed on my mother, who was a single mother, had 3 kids, and my brother was kind of stressing her out. So I was more so like, I just want to, do what I'm supposed to do so that, she's happy. And I pretty much did that. Always on the honor roll, very good student, and I was a virgin until I was 22 years old.
Okay.
And at that time, I actually was no longer a Christian, but I was still. I like to call that time period of my life the Afrocentric nun. So I was,
Wait. Say that again for folks in the back.
Yeah, so I call that time period of my life the time of the Afrocentric nun. So
Okay.
that is when I had, and once I describe it, people will know. Like I had the head wraps and I had the long skirts, and this is an image that I always show on my master classes. I have like a Malcolm X t-shirt, long skirt, head wrap, and my son is in a stroller. So I was like married to the revolution. I was no longer married to Jesus. I was married to the revolution.
Okay.
So so I was still very rigid,
Mhm.
in my sexuality, and still very disconnected. So I married, the first man who I ever had sex with, even though I wasn't Christian anymore. So I had only really had one partner and really hadn't really dated anybody else. I didn't know who I was as a woman, but I didn't know all that at the time. I just thought, well, I went to college, I got my degree, and now I'm dating this guy. He's nice, so we should get married and have a child because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
So I did that, and particularly after having my son, I just felt like this is something is wrong.
Mm.
Um, I went to school for theater, and I found myself no longer being creative, no longer being an artist. I stopped doing the things that I love. I stopped performing. I stopped writing. I just felt very shut down and very repressed. I noticed, or it became clear to me rather, that my ex husband and I were not on the same page about a lot of things, like spiritually, and life aspiration wise, it just felt like we were going in two different directions. We wanted different things out of life. So that didn't feel like it was in alignment, So I went through a big crossroad on whether I should stay in this relationship because
Mhm.
here I am, I have a son and we have this marriage and, this is supposed to be like the, for a young black woman to get married is like considered like you got the golden prize, like you got the golden ticket from Willy Wonka chocolate factory. It's just like,
Okay.
like that's what you're supposed to do,
Oh,
So yeah, man, he wants to be with you and your son, like, what are you doing? But I knew that I could not become the woman who I needed to be in that relationship. So after like much anguish and soul seeking and soul searching, I decided to leave that relationship because I knew there was another woman who I needed to become. And that relationship was not going to be able to hold her and support her and to allow her the space to expand into who she needed to be.
mhm.
So I left that relationship. And so here I was now, like 28 years old. I only been with one man my entire life. And I had heard about sacred sexuality and Tantra while we were together. And I remember bringing it up to my ex husband. He was just like, Tantra, weird. Like, what do you mean? Like, sex and spirituality. He was just like, it was just not a goal
It,
for him.
it wasn't his cup of tea.
It was not his cup of tea, wasn't interested. Thus, we're not married anymore. So after, leaving, then I was able to do my own research, find teachers, and really began to learn these sacred sexual practices in order for me to become the woman who I knew I needed to be. So it started with like a lot of self work, a lot of self healing,
Mhm.
and awakening my own inner goddess, which is why my company is called Let Go, Let Goddess. So I was able to do that. And then I went from being, like really repressed and um, depressed and just miserable to being able to find my own source of happiness within me and
Right.
to awaken my own inner goddess and power. So from there, a lot of friends noticed my transformation and they were like interested in the things that I was learning. And they were like, well, you should be teaching these things. So that's basically how I started doing my coaching business.
I love the transformation and I love the journey that you've gone on from, like you said, from the Afrocentric nun to finding yourself and claiming your own sensual and sexual self. So let's talk about this because you talk a lot about tapping into your magical powers for healing, manifestation, and all that good stuff. But can any woman tap into it?
Absolutely. It's actually our nature to be magical. It's the nature of feminine energy to be orgasmic. And that's one thing that I actually loved about learning about sacred sexuality. From a Western perspective, a lot of us go up thinking that, sex is really for men, like you are just supposed to be there for your partner and it's about his pleasure and that's your
Yeah,
job, as
yeah.
a partner, as a wife, just make sure your husband is happy and for you it's just like whatever, and in sacred sexuality says something different. Sacred sexuality says that a woman's nature is to be multi-orgasmic and full body orgasmic, and that in fact women are really sexually superior to men in a lot of different ways and that we actually have the advantage. So in learning that, that just really awakened me. But also I had always had a lot of sexual energy from a young age. But I felt very, like I said before, very repressed, shutting it down, felt like, self-pleasuring and masturbation was shameful. So I didn't, you know, wasn't until I discovered the path of sacred sex that I was able to really tap into that. So definitely every woman has the power and ability. It's our nature.
I like the fact that it's our nature. I like the fact that we are meant to be, as you say, multi-orgasmic. And we talk about the 9 levels of arousals and the 9 types of orgasms women can experience. But you talk about how most women find themselves non-orgasmic. Most women find themselves unable to even find an orgasmic state with themselves. What are the main reasons that get women to that place?
Yes, great question. And so I talk about this a lot. And actually, I had a recent master class that was actually specifically for Black women that I did recently. And I went into what are some of the major blockages for us as Black women. So one of the main things is, Black people, we are very spiritual people. And um, even in doing my research, it found that more Black, at least in America, more Black Americans pray and go to church than any other racial group. Okay.
I don't think that's only in the States.
Yeah, right. Right, yeah, but that's where the stat was from. So, but yes, I think in general, just as a people, we have a very much so connection to spirit in whatever religious form. However, some of the, I would say, like, consequences of Western religion or Christianity has had a negative effect on women's sexuality and has actually held us back. The whole story of Adam and Eve, and Eve being cursed in her womb to experience like pain with childbearing, and stories like that. Kind of, you grow up as a woman feeling like, well, something is wrong with me, right?
Hmm.
Because Eve did this thing, so now my womb is cursed to bring me pain when my menstrual cycle, and pain with childbearing. So religion, in many ways, is kind of one of the first blockages to us, especially a lot of times, because as women, we're held to a different standard than boys are,
Yep.
so it's kind of
Boys,
like,
boys will be boys, but girls need to keep their legs closed.
exactly, because you want to be good so you can get a husband, because no
Mhm.
man is not going to want to marry you if you're a whore and all these different things. So, there's a lot of double standards, there's a lot of hypocrisy, and a lot of the, unfortunately, ideology in the church doesn't really support women having a loving and healthy connection with their sexuality or their womb. Another big thing is our own personal trauma that holds us back. You know, so many women, unfortunately, have experienced sexual assault, rape, and molestation. And
Mhm.
a lot of times, we don't speak about it, in our families. If someone does know, I've talked to so many clients, and, they express that their families say you can't say anything. Like,
Mhm.
they don't really out the person who did it. So they don't have an opportunity to address the abuse, to address the perpetrator, and that has a huge effect on how they connect to sexuality when you have experienced sexual trauma. So much of that, I think those are the two biggest, influences, and us also having a disconnect with our own body as women. And if you don't take time to self pleasure yourself, then it's going to be very challenging when you're with a partner,
Yeah.
and if you are not comfortable with your own body and your own sexuality, then you often don't know how to advocate for yourself in the bedroom, or to explain, what feels good to you, what you like, or even tell your partner, no, I did not have an orgasm. Like, this is this position, this type of movement, whatever is
Yeah.
not working for me. Like, um, we repress a lot.
I you know what? This is absolutely so true. And the point that you made about self-pleasuring and the resistance, and especially within the community where there's still that, of course not, I don't do that. Or, I, I I was having a conversation with my producer the other day, and we're talking about the stuff that churches had said around things like masturbation, and you're like, oh yeah, you masturbate, you end up with hairy palms and go blind. So, like, I'm not surprised. So what is okay, so we've talked about the fact that it's the blocks, it's all of these things. So how can women start taking ownership of the body they're in?
Yeah, so that's what I love about sacred sexuality and tantra, is that, number one, a lot of people get into these practices and they think that you have to have a partner interested in it. Like, oh, I don't have a partner, so they just kind of shut it down. Like, that's something women do a lot. Like, there are women who I've talked to or have seen who haven't had sex for years. And it's just kind of like the whole sexuality is shut down.
Yeah.
However, there are certain practices within sacred sex and tantra that you can learn that helps you to tap into your own sexual energy for healing yourself. That does not necessarily, that you don't really need a partner to do. And that's a big focus of a lot of my work, is teaching women solo practices and how they can do their own healing and open their own orgasmic energy within themselves, that you don't need to have a partner to do these things. However, when and if you do, form partnership, it will actually help you to be multi-orgasmic and help you to actually even attract partners because you've raised your energy and vibration. So now the partners you attract will be partners who are willing to pleasure you or listening to you and what you want. You will attract a better quality partner.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
things like that, like breast massage is a huge one of my favorite practices that I've learned through studying the Taoist sacred sexual traditions. Working with the yoni egg, is another wonderful practice. And then also, just really meditating every day and being one with yourself is probably the most impactful thing. It may not be quote unquote so sexy. People may not understand, like, all right, what does that have to do with sacred sex? But
Mm.
in sacred sex, you are making sex a meditation, you're making it a prayer. So why not begin doing the meditation and prayer, that type of work with yourself first?
I like that. I like that. And we've been talking about the sacred sexuality, and you've been mentioning that tantra, and you are a tantra practitioner yourself. And okay, let's kind of hold up this, because we know that there's an idea that the whole concept of tantra, people look at tantra and go, mm-hmm, right? So it's just an excuse for folks to get naked and random people to get freaky together. I don't know that person. Why is this weird person coming over here wanting to touch me? That's what tantra looks like on the record. So can we set the record straight? Can you tell us what tantra is and isn't, and so that the misconceptions can be put to bed?
Yes, absolutely. Because yeah, I totally agree. From the outside looking in, it looks like craziness. It just looks like wonton, sex. But the
Hmm.
sexual label.
Everybody be having sex with everybody else.
And unfortunately, there are some, particularly with the neo tantra kind of new tantra movement, teachers out there who kind of promote a lot of that, which is why I like, I do use tantra and sacred sex. I like the term, sacred sex better, because tantra in itself doesn't necessarily have anything to do with sex, and that's something that people do not know.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
the word tantra in itself, you break it down, it basically means to expand. It has other derivatives, like it means to weave and to loom. So basically, um, what tantra as a philosophy helps one to do is to expand spiritually and to actually understand that spirit and matter are one. And
Mm.
that's the major difference with tantra and other even eastern beliefs, systems, because there's some eastern systems that are about kind of like desire is bad and we need to suppress desire because it just leads to suffering. Tantra doesn't abide by that. Tantra is like spirit and matter are one. So the more I actually open up to experience spirit in my body and in nature and in my interactions with other people in yoga and meditation, I open myself really to experiencing the ecstasy of spirit. So anything can become a doorway to meet spirit, meditation, watching the sunrise, noticing that there's a divine current and divine energy that moves through everything. That's really what Tantra really is about, is recognizing the divinity in everything and every being and every person. So if one recognizes that we're all divine and that there's no separation between spirit and matter, then sex can then become a prayer and a ritual and a meditation,
Mm.
because we understand that we don't just see sex from a lower level of just physical gratification, which is great. We like that too. We see it from a level of I am a divine being now connecting with another divine being, and we could actually make this sex an act of worship
Mm.
because I'm recognizing the divinity in you. So that's what the core of Tantra is about to me. And that isn't necessarily, it does not necessarily have to do with sex. It's more so for me a philosophy of how I experience life. And I allow myself to experience the pleasure and bliss of spirit in everything I do, which is why in a lot of my coaching programs, we have different exercises like just experiencing sensuality, experiencing taste
Mm.
and touch and smell and hearing. Any of that can become a doorway to spirit. It can become a doorway to experiencing the divine bliss, which really is our nature. And that's really what it's about.
You know what? I love this. I think the first, when you were speaking, what comes to mind is the quote by Prince, where he goes that sexuality is both spiritual and debased, and that's how he describes sex, that it's both spiritual and debased, and it's not an either or situation. So that's what I saw when you were speaking. So you were a twice published author. You have 3 books out, and your recent book that is out is called Wet. What was that journey to becoming an author like for you?
Yeah. So, yes, we actually have 4 books. The first book is a poetry book. That was like the very, very first book that came out. It's on Amazon somewhere. It's called Goddess Pages, Lady Shepsa. But the latest book is called Wet, 30-day deep dive into sensual bliss and feminine pleasure. So with this book, basically what I have done is taking a lot of these Taoist and tantric practices and
Hmm.
broken them down into a 30-day program
Right.
um, that allows women to explore a different exercise or practice every day. And the reason why I did that is because a lot of, when you go to study, sacred sex and, some tantric practices, some of it it doesn't feel accessible because it can actually be very intellectual and like heavy and wordy and some of
And the
these.
books are sometimes the size.
Yes, right, exactly. Some of them are written by men who are, they're writing from a more masculine base, which is more intellectual, as opposed to more feminine base, which would be more like emotion centered and feeling centered. So, um, the book Wet was actually based upon a coaching program that I used to have called Sensual Guided Boot Camp, and I then, renamed it and expanded it and made it into an actual book with these practices that I have learned to do. So, my overall goal with Wet is to give women hands on. My background as a classroom teacher. I taught in public school, middle school for many years. So I'm all about like you need practical. You have to be able to apply what you learn. You need
Oh,
practical
definitely.
practice. It cannot be just an intellectual exercise. So I could tell you that you're a goddess and it's your nature to be orgasmic. And yes, I could tell you all these beautiful flowery things and it can sound good, but it's like, how do I actually shift my energy to actually feel that way? How do I actually
Mhm.
get this into my body? So that is the point of the book, right? Gives you different exercises a day, every day for 30 days. There are 4 weekly themes, pleasure, juicy, sexy, and orgasmic, that help you to really explore a lot of these exercises and to use them to really to love on yourself and to heal yourself.
I love it. Absolutely love it. And I was reading Nice, the book Nice for What? And I just have to say this line caught me where you go that playing small is a prison that holds women back from living their best lives. And we know this to be true because if you're not, what steps can we take today as women to stop playing small?
Yes, yeah. And the book Nice for What? Let me grab it. I actually have it. Keep it close by on my altar. How to go from being a good girl to a badass goddess. And these books, in this book, I basically break down the steps that I personally took to awaken what I call my badass goddess, which
Mm.
is the part of me, the real me, that is bold and powerful and fearless and is no longer playing the nice girl. The word nice actually means to be foolish, to be naive,
Yeah.
and a big part of what we do is that we actually squelch our power by denying our power, by acting like we don't know how powerful we are because we are afraid to stand out. We're afraid to make other people uncomfortable.
Mm.
We are afraid of being seen. If you have a good girl complex like I did, then you think that you have to be perfect all the time, right? You think that you always have to be everything correct and the right answer because you're used to doing that. Like in school, you got
Hmm.
all A's or A's and B's, and you were the star model student, and you were the model child, and your parents already always held up with the pedestal because you always did what you're supposed to do. And that can become a prison because it does not allow you to explore. It doesn't really allow you to be an authentic human being.
It
Um,
doesn't give you room to make mistakes.
Right, right, exactly. It doesn't give you any room to make mistakes and just be human. And that's how we learn, that's how we grow. So for us to really um, stop denying our power, we have to allow ourselves to learn to explore and to also connect to our authentic desires. Because
Mm.
very often, as women, we get into fulfilling what maybe our parents want for us, what our partner want for us, what the church says we're supposed to do, what Western society says we're supposed to do. And this can leave us feeling like very unsatisfied and our own desires and our own creativity, our own, what makes us us, begins to fall by the wayside. And then you look around and it's like, well, who am I? Who am I outside of what everybody else wants me to be? What do I actually really want?
Mm.
And those are the questions that I asked myself that allowed me to be able to, leave my marriage once I saw that I'm not I'm not expressing my creativity. Like I'm not doing those things that are deeply important to me.
Mm.
I'm not fully living and fully expressing myself. So I have to free myself so I can allow myself space to do that, to explore, to get it wrong, to expand. So I
Mm.
think that is one of the biggest things, allowing ourselves to really tap into what we really want, our desires.
I am loving this, and it's that need to. I call it the good girl curse because you're going around and you're like, uh-huh. And then when you will either explode one day or you implode because you can't find your voice. So I love that you have this in a book that people can take practical steps, and we'll put the links to Amazon so people can go and get the book. You talk about bliss and you talk about how a lot of women lose bliss. Where did we lose it? What happened? Where did it go?
Yes. I think a huge obstacle for us is that we think that the bliss is outside of us. We
Mm,
think that the happiness will come when we get the right partner, find the right man, when
yeah,
we have the right job, when we have our,
it doesn't.
and then you wind up doing these things. So now you're defining yourself by all these roles that you play, you know?
Mm,
And if you haven't found that bliss within yourself first, then nothing outside of you is going to be able to give you long-standing happiness. Of course, we can find enjoyment in, our children and our partners and our career and things like that. However, if we are not deeply connected to our own bliss and satisfied within ourselves, then it's just everything is going to come up short. And we have seen that with not even just women, but men as well. People who appear to have everything, they have like the ideal life that maybe
yeah,
some would dream, and they're actually really miserable,
yeah.
because they thought these things and these people would open the door for them to find happiness and bliss. And it's like you really have to find it within yourself. And that's one thing that my spiritual practices have helped me to do,
Mm,
so that, because outside events and life are always going to happen. We're going to have challenges like we had freaking COVID, nobody saw that coming. There's so many, you know, different things. Life is going to change. I think Buddha said only thing constant is change. So things
yeah.
are going to always change. However, there's a part of us that's unchanging. There's a part of us that's already perfect, whole, and complete. And we can tap into that part of us to find happiness and to find bliss, no matter what may be going on around us. And then from that place and that a place of bliss and happiness, we can then change the world outside of
Yeah.
us, right? It happens within us first, and then we can begin to allow it to ripple out to our world.
I absolutely love that. And, I think spending that time cultivating our bliss is a requirement, should be as much a requirement for us as breathing or bathing. We need to always take that ownership of our bliss. And one of your favorite topics to talk about is the divine feminine power. So how do we cultivate it in our day-to-day
Had to get some water. Speaking of feminine energy.
lives?
um, so the first step I see to cultivating divine feminine energy is to get still and to slow down. I live in New York and it is very fast paced here. um, and that was actually, one blessing of being through quarantine is that everybody had to get feminine.
Time out.
Had to slow down. Everybody had to go in the house and just chill out. So I think that's the first step. We live in a culture that is like, I want it faster, that faster is better, I want it yesterday and everything has to go, we often are moving at this very frantic pace. And what you need to do is have to your feminists do the opposite. You need to actually relax, slow down,
Okay.
center yourself, tap into your feelings, right? The divine feminine energy is centered in her intuition and in her emotions. It's not just being ruled by the intellect and logic, which is more masculine. And of course, we all have the feminine and masculine energy within us.
Yeah.
However, in Western culture, things that are feminine are not held up as high as masculine attributes. So logic and reasoning and quote unquote science, all that is held up higher than things that are more feminine, which would be more like intuition, emotion, spirituality, creativity, the arts. Those would be more feminine energy expressions because it's about being in the flow. To be a great artist, you can't just be in your head. You want to be able to allow the creativity to flow through you. So it's the same thing
Absolutely.
being in your feminine energy. You have to slow down. You have to breathe. You have to take your time and allow yourself to be present. That is a big major thing about Tantra is presence. Being present, being aware, what's happening, in my body, how do I feel? How is this showing up for me? What's present for me right now? And to understand that what's present for me now may not be present in 5 seconds or 5 minutes, and that's fine. We cultivate this awareness and being able to be the witness of what's happening with us. So, I would say for any woman who wants to connect to her divine feminine energy, to find daily time to meditate, allow yourself to close your eyes, to slow down, to go within, to connect, and then at least once a week to do something. I call it like my self-care days, to do something that allows you to just really relax. Relaxation is so important for feminine energy. And that could be taking a bath, it could be reading a book, it could be a nap day, it could be, watching your favorite movies, but something that's going to allow you to really rest, to slow down, to go within, and all of that will help you to tap deep into your feminine.
I love every bit of what you're saying, Lady Shepta. Yes, and I think you're right. The world needed that time out when the COVID struck, and we all, Mother Nature's like everybody indoors and just take your time. Everybody indoors and relax. And we're not saying for anyone listening, we're not trivializing COVID, but it's like we needed a reset and we needed a moment to just, and we were forced into that relaxation, and a lot of things have come up from that period. A lot of people are realizing, uh-uh, that thing I thought was normal is not the normal I want. So there's definitely that truth of the saying, being able to be present with yourself and making room to just breathe into yourself. We need that on a consistent basis. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just for those who are in female bodies. This is something that even men can cultivate for themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, we all have divine feminine and masculine energy. And with the way the world is much more polarized in masculine energy, not even always positive masculine energy a lot of times. So men definitely also need to slow down, connect to the feminine, because men are also injured when they don't connect to the feminine energy. You know, they too need healing. They too also need rest and to slow down. It's very important to feed their masculine energy so that they
Yeah.
have the energy then to be able to go out and to be active and to do all the things that masculine energy, you know, is called to do. You
Hmm.
have to balance it with rest.
Okay. So we're talking about this whole cultivating the feminine energy, the divine, helping women reconnect to their bliss, reconnect with their body. One of the things that you said in the very beginning was that you work with a yoni egg. Let's start this conversation about the yoni egg. Oh, the yoni egg is coming to the camera. The yoni egg is coming to the camera. All right. So for all of those people who don't know, what is a yoni egg and why would a woman need one?
Yeah, so the yoni egg is actually and comes from an ancient Taoist practice. And at that time, they didn't call it the yoni egg. The yoni egg is more of a new term because yoni is a Sanskrit word, and the word yoni actually, you know, people use it interchangeably with vagina, but it translates into meaning sacred space, divine passageway. So it's a beautiful name for calling the vagina and the womb, you know, the whole uterus area. So in ancient China, the original egg that most people use was made of jade. So this is a jade egg. And with the jade egg, it was a practice that only the women in the royal court knew about. So unless you were a queen or a concubine of the emperor, you wasn't really, you know, about the yoni egg life necessarily. So the women of the royal court use the yoni egg to become what they call is immortal. So in Taoism, which is the practice in ancient China this comes from, Taoists are very much so interested in health and longevity. So they
Hmm.
call that immortality. So what the yoni egg does, number one, it is an egg made of gemstones like jade. And what you do is that it's inserted into the vagina. And there are certain exercises that you do with the yoni egg, like a very, you know, simple one, though I teach much more of a ritualistic practice. But, you know, even simply doing kegels with the egg. A lot of people know about kegels when you're, you know, squeezing your
Hmm.
pelvic floor muscles, your vaginal muscles. So with the yoni egg, you could do that. And then it becomes like vaginal weightlifting.
Yeah.
But the yoni egg also has a lot of spiritual um, abilities as well. So number one, just the stone jade itself is very healing. It's a stone of wealth, a stone of health and longevity. So just by putting your crystal into your vaginal canal, you're now sending healing vibrations with the crystal throughout your womb, throughout your uterus, is bringing a lot of healing energy. Also, in our vaginal canal, we actually have reflexology zones. So, reflexology is basically the idea that when we touch certain parts of our body, it will stimulate another part of our body, our
Yeah.
major organs. So, we have reflexology points all over our body. We have them on our ears, we have them on our hands, we have them on the bottoms of our feet. We
Hmm.
also have them on our genitals, both men and women. So, when you have the yoni egg inside of your vaginal canal, and you're using the eggs going up and down, side to side, however you're using it, then you're actually massaging the reflexology zones in your vagina. So you're
Okay.
stimulating your kidney, your liver, your heart, your spleen, you know, all of these organs. And then the yoni egg also helps you to open up the orgasmic channels in your body so
Hmm.
that the sexual energy is expanding out of your genitals to actually come up through the core channel and to be able to open and to balance your chakras. So you want to focus on not just vaginal, you know, squeezing and doing vaginal exercises with the egg, but there's certain meditations that you learn when you really learn to use the egg properly. You learn certain meditations to help you to learn to circulate the sexual energy, to help to bring up the sexual energy. So now it's going beyond just your yoni, It's going into your chakras. It's going to your crown chakra. It's going over your entire body.
Okay.
So so it's a great tool for healing and becoming multi-orgasmic.
Okay. So you talked about the jade and, jade being of healing properties and and many other great qualities. Are there any other stones or crystals that you would recommend? Like, let's say obsidian, what is the benefit of using obsidian? What is the benefit of using a rose quartz? What's the benefit of using something like a citrine as well?
Yeah, great question. So, uh, in the Taoist lineage, with the teachers who I have had, the three main stones that they recommend to use are jade, obsidian, and rose quartz.
Okay.
So the thing about using various crystals is that number one, you want to make sure it's a crystal that's safe to go inside of your body, and certain crystals may have certain elements or metals that are not safe. So mainly, these are the three stones that I personally use and that
Hmm.
I advise women to use. So, in terms of the properties, so rose quartz, I love jade, but I really love both. But rose quartz is really a beautiful stone, beautiful energy. I don't have it accessible; it's on my altar somewhere. But it's a pink stone, and it helps to open and to connect the heart chakra.
Right.
So if you have had heartbreak, and if you want to experience more self-love, rose quartz is really good for you. It's also a stone of romance. For me, it gives me like I feel like a light, like bubbly energy when I
Okay.
have rose quartz. With obsidian, though, and I do have an obsidian egg close by, and they look almost similar because
Yeah.
this is a dark jade, but this is actually dark green. So obsidian
Ah,
does. So with obsidian, actually is not even a crystal. It actually comes from it's volcanic glass. It comes from lava that was cool very quickly. So this stone is for the person who really wants to do deeper work, what some people call shadow work. It's a great stone for protection. It's a great stone to show you what you need to work on.
mhm.
Um, excuse me. So you have to really be ready for the work of the obsidian. I personally have not experienced, negative experiences with working with obsidian. But for some people, it can make them feel like a heavier energy because it's about really kind of going within
Mhm.
and releasing your blockages. So it just all depends on, what you need to work on, how much work you have done, or what's going on with you at a particular time. So, obsidian is a very powerful stone and it's a stone of protection. So I have felt that when working with obsidian. I have felt like a very strong, like protective force field,
Mm.
around me. So, you know, all of these, these three crystals, everybody will have their own experience with them, but these are just, some general properties associated with them.
Okay. So I'm loving this. And so, ladies and those who are loving their ladies in their lives, you want to go and check out Lady Shep's site and let her talk to you about different yoni eggs and why you need them. And, there was this whole thing with the whole group website selling them for some interesting prices. And where would you recommend women to go to actually source genuine yoni eggs?
Okay, so I do. I don't have it on my site, but I do sell yoni eggs from time to time for the women who are in my coaching program. So I actually just had an order that is coming in today. So it depends on when you catch me. I may or may not have some. I do not like, personally, I don't like to sell yoni eggs just to the masses because what I find is that most women don't really know how to use them and they won't
Hmm.
use them. So it's kind of like it becomes this thing that you get, like, oh, pretty crystal, which is fine. Yay, let's have that. But they don't actually know what to do with it and they
Yeah.
just sit in their drawer or on their altar. So I'm not a big yoni egg seller. So in my, I have women who there's a coaching program for my book Wet. And with that coaching program, you get instructional videos and you also get 3 live Q&A calls with me and guidance rituals. So, that is a place where I like to, I can sell the yoni egg to women who are in the program because you're going to be working with me, you're going to have the book, and you'll be good to go. So for women, you know, if you can link up with me, get the book and get into one of my programs and you can get a yoni egg. However, if you know, whatever, you just don't have time for all that or whatever. Just make sure whatever egg you buy, make sure is GIA certified, which is like the gemstone, like organization that actually makes sure that the crystals are real.
Okay.
So I don't have a particular seller, you know, that I would say go get from this person. But when you do, you know, go do your searches, make sure it is GIA certified,
Okay.
especially if you're dealing with jade, make sure it's genuine jade, because you just want to be mindful of what you're putting in your body and making sure that, you know, the crystal is a real, you know, crystal.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And so, we've been talking about this whole healing aspect and women finding their way back to their bodies. And we touched on it briefly when we talked about the impact religion has had on women of color, not just in the States, but I'll say globally. Um, my question is, have we almost been taught to be afraid of owning and loving our own bodies, our own vaginas? And how do we start taking back our complete body?
Oh, yes. And that's something else that I touch on a lot, particularly with women of color, whom, for many of us, we didn't have ownership over our bodies. You know, with slavery and colonization, our bodies have been constantly objectified and seen through the eyes of the other, you know, and seen as, you know, hypersexual and things like
Yeah.
that. So what often happens with us is that we don't want to be seen as hypersexual, so we kind of shut it down and we repress these things, and you know, we also become very judgmental, like I used to be. We then in turn judge other women who seem to be free sexually, and like, oh, like, you know, really put them down,
Yeah.
as opposed to finding that balance within ourselves of being able to say that I can be, you know, it's not either or, it's both and.
Yeah.
I can be smart and I can be sexy.
Yeah.
I can love to read books and I can also love to self pleasure and to have sex with my partner and to have orgasms. You know, I don't have to choose. And I think that's a big realization that many of us, you know, are coming to and need to continue to come to, is that it doesn't have to be either or, it can be both and. I can be smart and I can be spiritual and I can be a mother, I can be a girlfriend, I can be a wife, I can be all these things. And I too can be very sexual and I can be very sensual. And in fact, is healthy for
Hmm.
me to have that connection to my own sensual and sexual energy. The Taoists believe that sexual energy is the fountain of youth, that it really is a source of vitality. So this is why they really spend a lot of time focusing and cultivating sexual energy, because they understand that the woman or the man who has a lot of sexual energy will have that longevity. Just like if
Hmm.
you see an older person who's kind of like fresh, you know, you've ever seen like a fresh old lady or fresh old man, like
Yep.
they're spunky, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
like they're not dried up, you know, they got some youthfulness to them. So like that is the power of sexual energy. We want to be frisky and vital, and you know, we want to have this playfulness about us even as we age.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, you touched on that point where it's not it's we're no longer in that place where it should be, we're either Madonna or the whore. And I think there should be a third space where I am neither Madonna, I'm neither a whore. There's a space in between where I am a balance of the two. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, 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 exactly. Yeah, it's like the version of the whore, you know, which is like a very like Western, all that comes from like patriarchy
Hmm.
and needing to have a set of women who they can like debase and defy or see as lower and lesser than women ones who are
On the
hetero,
pedestal.
like almost asexual, like you're just the mother kind of
Hmm.
archetype. So it's like, no, the goddess is everything. The goddess is both virgin and whore. She's the priestess and the prostitute. She's all of these things. And we have that ability to find that middle ground, like you said, within us.
And I love that. And I think it's funny because, when we kind of look around at what's supposed to make a woman a good woman, and like, oh yeah, you have to be virginal and to be considered a wife material. Whereas I was doing some reading, and in ancient Egypt, to be considered worthy of marriage, you have to have served at the temple of Isis. And literally, you're at the temple of Isis, your job is to provide pleasure to those who come to the temple. And so it's you have to go through that process to be seen as eligible for marriage. And it shows you how it's turned itself on its head because of an introduction of a religion that claimed a woman ate an apple from a talking snake.
Right, exactly. Why are we listening to the story?
You know,
Years later.
I mean, if we kind of take that story and kind of look at it logically, you're like, hold on, let me get this straight. A woman who came out from someone's rib ate an apple from a talking snake, and the whole world ended up upside down. Yeah, that sounds about that. Just yeah, just that shit crazy.
Right, yeah. And this is also just like, archaeologically and biologically, man was not created first. Like this just didn't happen. The first being was a woman, So it's like even looking at that, how that whole story was turned around, and man had to be created first, and she came from him, as opposed to it's like decentering the womb. Now the womb is like, oh, we didn't come from the womb, we came from others. This is interesting.
I mean, we do not have enough time to go into the story of the Adam, Eve, Lilith story, but another time, because I'm definitely getting you back on the show.
Yes, I would love to.
So we have come to that part of the show where we talk about our so loud moment for the week. And please, Christians, don't write me and tell me that you heard what I said. I'm just saying, looking at it logically. Please don't come for me. And if you do, hey. So yes, as I was saying, we'll come to the part of the show where we're talking about our so loud moment of the week. This is where you get to celebrate a person, a fan, your choice. What would you like to celebrate, Lady Shepsta?
I feel like Snoop. I want to, what Snoop said, I want to thank myself for being myself. I like to congratulate myself I actually just launched last week a coaching program called Queen, which is Queen, a sacred sexual healer initiation for Black women.
Love it.
And it's just exclusively for Black women to, number one, go on a deeper journey to connect with their feminine energy and sexuality. And then there's also a certification track where I'll be certifying women to become sacred sex coaches. So that's super exciting.
Awesome.
I'm celebrating that by going to Tulum on vacation next week. So
love it. Absolutely love it. Oh, you need to tell. Oh, okay. You need to tell us what Tulum is like, because we want to go so badly.
Yes, I'm excited. I need blue waters. I need sun. I need to get out of this New York, pollution.
I understand. I can appreciate. Please go and enjoy on behalf of us who are stuck in the UK for now. So I know that your work inspires a lot of women, and I know that you're on a mission to inspire women to find their fulfillment, to find themselves. But who inspires you?
Yes. So just as you were asking that question, I just began to think back to when I first, before I knew what sacred sex was and Tantra was, when I first was trying to find myself as a woman, where did I go? I went to Black Women Authors. I went to Nikki Giovanni. I went to Toni Morrison. I went to Sonia Sanchez, Bell Hooks. And these women and reading their books helped me to understand my experience as a Black woman, that the things that I'm experiencing is I'm not alone, and that there are, historical and social and all types of shaping factors that have affected our lives to be the way they are, and lots of healing that need to happen. So I would say first, that was like really like my first place. getting inspired. Uh, Another deity goddess whom I love dearly is Goddess Oshun,
Mm.
who is of the Yoruba pantheon. She's an Orisha from the Yoruba religion, from people from West Africa in Nigeria. And she represents sensuality and healing and fertility and love. And for me, sometimes Oshun is portrayed to be very shallow and very frivolous. And it's my experience with her. It's not who she is at all. To me, the greatest lesson Oshun has taught me is about self-love.
Mm.
And I believe it is Oshun who brought me into these teachings of sacred sexuality to learn to love myself. So those are two of my greatest inspirations.
Oh, I love that. I love the fact that you talk of Oshun and you talk about the Yoruba pantheon. Love that. Love those books. And so there is a lot delved into when we start looking at developing all parts of ourselves. And looking at your journey so far, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Woo! Child. Yes. My 18-year-old self, I would give her the advice to love herself first,
Mm.
to know that she is powerful. And I think at 18, I had some kind of inkling of my power, but I think I was afraid of it, you
Mm.
know, and, was looking for outside validation. But for her to know that she is powerful and it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to have experiences and to have fun and to enjoy her life and to allow herself to explore and that she doesn't have to get everything right all the time, like really to enjoy the journey and to travel and to probably have sex a little soon than what I did.
Okay, so that's the message for your 18-year-old self. Now, I wanted to talk about in one of your books, you talk about the differences about the difference with a beggar, an emperor, and a goddess. What is the difference?
Yes, yes. The beggar is the one who's looking for outside validation. And I actually got it from an Osho quote, and I love Osho. He's a tantric mystic who was alive in the 21st century. So um, the beggar is the one whom is looking, just like how a beggar goes about with a cup, asking for people to fill their cup
Mm-hmm.
with coins and change and things like that. A lot of us are beggars with our energy. And we're going around, we're asking other people to fill our cup to make us full, right? So that's the beggar. The emperor, because the Osho quote says, you're not sent into this world to be beggars, you're sent to be emperors. And then I changed it and I said, actually, I'm more than an emperor, I'm a goddess. The emperor is, think Game of Thrones, and people were battling for the Iron Throne. So it's like one leader, and you have all these kings and queens underneath you. That's the emperor, right?
Yeah.
So the goddess for me um, means that I'm also ruling over my kingdom because our kingdom is ourself. All the different parts of us. But for me, as a goddess, I'm co-ruling with the divine, right? So
Mm.
it's not just me um, ruling according to my own sometimes limitations and my inability to see everything, So as the goddess connecting to my own inner goddess, now I'm co-ruling with the divine. I am now um, collaborating with life instead of trying to
Mm.
force things because that's a more masculine way, right? Trying to force and make things happen, which is fine, sometimes, but I like living from a feminine space. I want to go with the flow. I want to flow with the divine. I want to be in the divine alignment and I want to allow that which is for me to come to me, as opposed to feeling like I have to force and make things happen. So for me, it's like me and the divine are having a happy marriage that allows
Okay.
to, co create my life.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. That is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I might have to borrow those words because that is absolutely beautiful. Now, before I let you go, I want to ask what's coming up for you. How can people connect with you? Tell us, give us some deets so people can connect with you and also stay in flow with you.
Yes. So, great thing about me and my business is that if you remember Let's Go, Let Goddess, then you'll be able to find me. I am Let's Go, Let Goddess on Instagram, Let's Go, Let Goddess on Facebook, and my website is let's go let goddess.com. So, if you
Beautiful.
actually go to my website, you can get a free goddess bundle that has a free meditation. It has some badass goddess affirmations. It has a prayer for good girls in recovery. And it has these things in PDF and audio version. And you also get a couple of videos, a video about how to rid yourself of negative thinking, stopping you from stepping into your power. So you get a whole, called the Goddess Juju Bundle. So you get a whole bundle for free when you sign up at my website, and immediately comes to your email. And then you also be on my list. So the next time I have a free master class, or anything that I have happening, you'll be the first to know because you're on the email list.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll share what we'll do. We'll share your link so that people can get access to your website and sign up for the Goddess Bundle. And, it's just a pleasure to have you on. And I'm looking forward to having you back. And you've already said yes, so it's going to happen.
Yes, yes. I can't wait to be back. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this conversation. And I also just enjoy being interviewed by another sister, another Black woman. That doesn't
Oh,
always happen.
oh, thank you. Thank you.
So I really appreciate sharing space with you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, guys, you've heard it. You now know why your goddess energy is important. And goddess energy is not just for the female gender, it is for the masculine gender to find his and connect his feminine center. You understand now why owning and loving your body is critical to your success as a human being, as a woman, to finding and owning yourself. You've learned about the yoni egg. If there's any questions, reach out to Lady Shepsha via her website, Let Go, Let Goddess, and find out some more. Now you've listened, you know what to do. Share it out on social, give us a like. We're here, and if you want to hear more, let us know, and we'll come back to you. Same time, same place. Bye.